right. Well, yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. Really appreciate it. It's always great to see people interested in making an impact in the community and trying to learn better ways that they can do that. So thanks for being here. Just a quick intro from me. My name is Nate. I am the Executive Director of Utah Approves. As you all probably know, we work on approval voting here in the state. Um, and just some background for why we're doing this workshop. We are currently in the midst of an effort to ask the legislature to provide approval voting as an option to cities across the state. And so as part of that effort, we're collecting letters from city councils that state they support approval voting being an option. We think it's valuable for city council members to hear directly from their constituents that there is an interest in approval voting in their city. And that kind of makes it more likely that they'll respond to you and be willing to hear a presentation if they think that there's interest coming directly from their city. We've given several presentations this year already, and I've received support from 4 cities so far in Huntsville, North Ogden, Plain City, and then most recently South Ogden. So all in Weber County so far, but we're trying to branch out to other parts of the state. We're expecting to hear back from possibly a few more cities here in the next week, so that's really exciting. But we're hoping to kind of spread out from there and get volunteers and other people across the state involved in this effort to reach out to their own city councils. So today we're going to be talking about drafting emails to your city council to ask if they'd be open to giving us a presentation. With this workshop, we're hoping that we can pass on what has helped us be successful in the past, but also give you guys any skills that you might be able to take from this effort for anything that you do in the future as well. But to start, I do want to give a short overview on what approval voting is, so you'll be able to form an effective summary when drafting your email. Before I get started with my presentation, though, does someone here want to tell me what you know about approval voting, what it is, and possibly something that you'd like to learn about it today? Don't be shy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved for a while, so I mean, I have some knowledge, but approval voting really simply is just changing the system from vote for one to approve for as many as you would like. This fixes a lot of the big issues that we currently have with our elections, the spoiler effect, and this allows us to have more accurate representation, including for candidates who don't win. People are still able to see, like, okay, even though they didn't win, they still had like 30% of the vote or something, which can help third parties and alternative ideologies actually have a chance. And that competition, I personally believe, is very healthy for a democracy.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, yeah, that's a great explanation. For those who didn't know, yeah, Trevor has worked for Utah Approves before, so yeah, happy to have him here today. Hey, Daryl, good to see you.
Hi.
Welcome in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation here. I just want to go over a little bit on approval voting, and then we'll dive into the specifics on writing these emails to your city council. Okay, so first off, what is approval voting? Just a really short explanation. Approval voting allows you to say yes or no for each candidate rather than saying yes to only one candidate. The candidate with the most yes votes or the highest approval rating wins. You can see an example of what the ballot looks like here. So just want to make sure everyone kind of understands the method that we're talking about today as we start to draft these emails. But the biggest thing that I like about approval voting is that it helps with vote splitting. So getting into that, the biggest question is, why do we vote? So we vote to elect the candidate who can best reflect the values of the voters. In other words, the goal is for the winner to represent the average voter. So the biggest question here is, if this is the goal of voting, why doesn't choose one voting work? So on this, choose one voting works basically by selecting the candidate who reflects the values of the largest single slice of the population rather than a broad consensus candidate who best represents the entirety of the population, and most often that's going to be a majority of the population. Now, this often occurs because of vote splitting. So if you look at this chart here, on the top I've listed the average Utah voter. It says 6.1. This is a 6.1 on a scale from progressive to conservative, but under choose one voting, a candidate who gets in the race that represents the average voter will actually split the moderate Republican vote. And so you can see at the bottom here, we have Democrats on the left, the independents and moderate third parties. This is how big their voting bloc is in Utah. Moderate Republicans are here, and then the more conservative Republicans are over here. So if you have a candidate that jumps in the race anywhere in this middle section, what happens is they split this moderate Republican vote. The Democrats get their candidate and take off a chunk of the independents, and that conservative Republican wins every time, even though that moderate Republican or more moderate independent who represents a larger majority of the population and better reflects everyone overall is actually the best candidate. Because of vote splitting, this conservative Republican will win the race every time. Now, that's not to say that the conservative Republican doesn't deserve to win some races in Utah. We're just talking strictly statewide here. But in many statewide races and even some districts across the state, we see this happening pretty frequently. And so the goal is to basically best represent the entire population. Now, how is approval voting different? So our current system, like I mentioned, it elects that person with the highest single slice of the population. In other words, that's exclusive support, and they have a passionate base of support. Whereas approval voting elects on a favorability rating. So we do those favorability polls every election, especially you see those often for presidential races, and you see how liked a candidate is overall by the overall population. Whoever would win a poll like that would win under an approval voting race. So we're actually picking the candidate who is most liked rather than someone who can segment the largest single slice, in other words, a plurality of the population. Oftentimes we see people win with 40% or 35 or sometimes down to 30%, and that percentage just drops lower and lower the more people that are in the race. Approval voting tends to favor candidates that have a broad-based appeal, so appeal across multiple spectrums of the population. So on that last slide, it would be someone who appeals to those independents, those moderate Republicans, and maybe even some values of the conservative Republicans, rather than someone who's all the way on that right wing of the conservative base in here in Utah. Now, our current system can work really well if you only have 2 candidates in the race. But approval voting works really well when you have any number of candidates in the race because you don't have to worry about vote splitting because you get to give your opinion on everybody. So by saying yes to everybody in the race that you like, rather than only having to narrow it down to one person, you don't have to worry about the vote being split and somebody who's actually less reflective of the values of the voting population winning. So under this same dynamic and approval voting, moderate Republicans and some Democrats will also approve of that independent candidate, leading to the candidate that best reflects all of our values winning. So you can see what that would look like on this chart here, that independent person who is a 6.2 on that scale of progressive to conservative, again, where a 6.1 is actually the most representative, would win rather than on this slide Alice, who is an 8.3. So basically, approval voting does a really good job at just getting the candidates that are actually most liked and most reflective of the voters' values and choosing that candidate in a very straightforward and easy way. So now that we understand approval voting, actually I want to talk about one more thing here. Security and administration is a big reason that we like approval voting here in the state. One of the biggest reasons of that is because it is precinct summable, and that's just a fancy way to say that we can tally all of the votes in the locations that they are cast. We don't have to put a bunch of ballots in a truck and take them to a central location. We don't have to electronically transmit data to a central tabulation location. We can just count the votes where they are cast and then transmit the totals to a reporting location. For that reason, the county clerks have stated approval voting is the only alternative that has an audit trail that they are comfortable with. And the reason for that is there's no single weak point of security, and you can trace back all of the counting of the ballots and where they were cast a lot easier than some other alternative methods that require that central tabulation. And another big reason for this is our state already works this way. We are a bottom-up state that tabulates votes in individual locations already, so it's not a major overhaul of the system. And again, for that reason, county clerks are supportive of implementing approval voting if cities want to try it. And so that's what our effort is about today, is going to be writing these letters to try to get more cities showing their support so that we can possibly add it as an option. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is finding contact info. And I guess before I get to that, does anybody have any questions about approval voting? Any thoughts on anything that I just went over? Okay, sounds like we're good there. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get into writing these letters then. So the first thing is going to be finding contact information. So the first thing I'd recommend is you're just going to go to Google and you're just going to search the city or town that you're in, and just type the name and then city, town, council. So real quick, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen on this screen and do this research with you guys to show you what it looks like. There are a few interesting things that can happen when you do this, such as not being able to find contact info or being listed differently than you would expect it to. So I'm going to show you guys a few different examples of this and the things that you might run into, and hopefully we can find all the contact info for the cities that you're in or that you might have connections to right now. So real quick, again, remind me where everyone is here in Utah. If you can just go through and say what city you're in.
I'm in Orem.
Okay, Orem,
American Fork.
American Fork,
South Salt Lake.
South Salt Lake,
Clearfield.
Clearfield. Okay, great. Well, those are 4 cities that we have not given presentations to yet, so that's perfect. So I'm going to do an example just on a few cities that I have reached out to. The first one I'm going to start with is Provo. So I'm just going to type Provo City Council and we'll see what comes up here. So you'll see here I get, basic search results that say City Council, City of Provo. There's a hyperlink straight here to contact the council. So that's what I'd normally click, but I'm just going to show you how to find it once you get onto the web page. So every city council website is going to look a little bit different. They vary a lot. They have people inside the city that usually work at City Hall that are designing these websites. So you will have some super functional websites. You'll have some that are not very functional at all. Some don't even exist. And I'll go over the case for how to find contact info if that's the case. But starting here, the first thing that you're going to look for usually is a tab that says government. Might be a little bit small here, but you'll see when I hover over this one, there's the mayor's office and then city council. Sometimes you might be looking for a label that says city government or maybe just a directory in general. Sometimes it'll just say elected officials. So just kind of use your best judgment to find where you think that contact info will be. You might have to poke around a little bit. But on Provo, it's pretty straightforward. You have government, city council, and then contact the council is right here. Now, one of the nice things about some cities is they do provide an email address to contact all of your council members all at once. So Provo is one of those. It just says council@provo.org. That is actually a really straightforward one. So what I would do is I would just copy that over into my email drafting. I use Gmail, so I'll just put that in the to line and we're good to go from there. But I'll show you another example here. We will do, I think on my list I had Millville, which is a smaller city in Cache County. So Millville City Council, you'll see that this came up with like a news post. They also have city government. We're going to click this one here. Okay, so here's their city government menu. Elected officials is the first one on here. These are the types of pages that you're going to see more frequently. Is going to be individual contact info for each of your council members. So you have David, Ryan, Daniel, Pamela, Clay, and Jeremy all right here. So in this case, I would copy all of their emails over individually. And I would recommend that you contact everyone all at once rather than doing separated emails. The biggest reason for this is that one, it saves you some time and some work to just do it all in one email. But additionally, this makes it so that when they receive the email, they know that everyone else has seen it as well. They don't think that maybe you only sent it to them, which makes it easier to ignore. If they receive that and they know that everyone on the council is seeing that. If the mayor is listed on this page, you can throw them in as well. In fact, I'd recommend throwing the mayor's contact info in as well, even if it's listed on a different page. And then on that note, I'd also recommend getting like a city manager or a city administrator on there as well. Every city or town has a different way that they do city council agendas. Some the city manager will make, some the mayor will make. Sometimes city council members can decide their own by filling out a form and submitting it to the mayor. So I would include all of those people on there to make sure that you get to the person that does make it. And either way, it's best practice because even if city managers or administrators aren't on the council, they are typically still pretty heavily involved in making decisions like this, even when it comes to giving presentations, because they oftentimes are the ones that have to go through the individual laws or the process for talking to the counties about what voting method that they're going to be using. So it's best just to keep everybody in the loop. Okay, so this is another example. Usually the best way on like Chrome or Brave is that you can right click and just press copy email address. If that doesn't work, you can just highlight and copy with a right click or Control C and then just paste it into that email that you're writing. Be careful when you do this. Sometimes if you do the copy email address and you paste it, it will get extra characters because whoever designed the website made a small mistake. So sometimes you'll see something that says like %25 and then has their email address. That's just like a character in the coding that is used to make websites. I think it's like a space or something like that. So just be aware when you paste it in that no extra characters were added. If they were, just erase them and you'll be good to go. To give another example here, I think each of these have slightly different pages, so I just wanted to show a few examples. This is Amalga Town. Obviously, if you live there, you'll know if it's a town or a city, but just be careful to type town or city when you're looking for it. I've had the case where I was looking for a city council agenda that I was supposed to be presenting on and looked up the city and was curious why I wasn't on the agenda. And then I realized I was looking at a city in South Carolina. So had the same name, but it wasn't the one in Utah. So sometimes you just have to specify town or city or type the word Utah to make sure you're getting the city that you're looking for. Amalga is a really small town. I think their population is somewhere around 700. Their website's very simple, but they have one. If I scroll down here, you'll notice that they have an email address down here that's just a Gmail. It says amalga6590@gmail.com. Some places won't have any contact info individually for the mayor or for the city council. They might have phone numbers like they have listed here, which is fine. If you want to give them a call, that's great, but typically it's nice to get an email request in so that everyone on the council can read it. So if you need to, you can just copy these generic emails that they have at the bottom that reach the town in general. A lot of times this will go to the town clerk and they'll pass the info along or talk to the mayor or the council themselves. Additionally, if you are struggling to find contact info at all, if you can't find any email, almost always there will be an email for the town clerk. So if you can't find anyone, last case scenario is going to be that town clerk, and just look for their email, and you can modify what you're writing. Instead of saying Dear City Council, you can say Dear Town Clerk, I'd like you to pass this on to the council. So the one other thing that I'll mention is that some will have a submission form for each of their council members, meaning that they don't have the email listed. It will just have, please enter your name, your email address, your subject, and your message on their website. When you're doing this, that can be kind of annoying because, again, you don't want to be sending individual emails to each of them. So in those cases, I'll also look for the town clerk email and email them directly, so that I can just send one email and ask them to forward it along rather than doing them multiple. Some cases I found, very rarely, but there are a few cities that don't have town clerk info and only have those submission forms. So if you need to, you can go ahead and do that. But typically, I like to just keep it to one email. One more case that I wanted to show you guys is what happens if you can't find a website or if you can't find any contact info whatsoever. There's a law in Utah that you have to list public meetings on this website. It's the public notice website. So any public meeting that's happening in any city or town across the state is required to give notice on this website. And almost always you will find an email for someone in the city here. It doesn't always list who they are, so you might not know who you're contacting. It's probably going to be the town clerk, though. Sometimes it's going to be the mayor. But this is your last case scenario. You can almost always find contact info on the public notice website if you can't find it elsewhere. Okay, any questions on finding contact info?
No questions, but that website, that's very helpful. In the past, I've like tried to get to like city council meetings and stuff, and it's always a pain just trying to figure out where to even find that information. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, this
Yeah, that's a
website's
super
great.
cool. Didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and usually you'll find this if you search the city name, and Hiram does have a website, but some cities won't. Usually one of the first results is going to be that public notice website. So.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Was everyone following along trying to find their own contact info while I was doing that, or would you guys like to take a couple minutes and give it a shot?
I was doing it, but so Clearfoot City, they don't have a single for the whole group. But so should I like email the mayor and CC the council, or just pick a member as the main contact and CC the rest of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would normally do is get the mayor and the whole city council, and rather than like CCing, I would just put all of them as the recipient, and you can address them as Dear Clearfield Mayor and City Council, or you can just say council members, because sometimes the mayor is considered a member of the council as well.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Okay, and if you are like on your phone or don't have access to a computer, that's totally fine. But if you are, I'd definitely recommend getting a repetition in right now, just trying to see what you can find.
Yeah, I'm looking at Orem right now. I found the mayor and city council page, and I can contact. So yeah, I have contact for all of them, but they're individual things. So earlier, oh yeah, I guess I can just include all of them in the same email.
Yep,
And then I would also want to see if I can find the city manager and clerk, ideally.
Yeah, and usually the like manager and administrator will be listed on a different page under like city staff rather than elected officials. Sometimes they'll be on the same one, but worst case, just try to find the directory on the website and you can find that.
I have a question that might be easy to answer, and that would be my city of South Salt Lake. The council members are separate, the mayor is separate, and then I will look for the city clerk whom I know who it is. But when I get all those emails in my to section, when I start my address, would it be proper to just say Dear South Salt Lake rather than Dear Mayor and Council and City Person? Can you just address it as the city?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that would be totally fine. I don't see an issue with that. And I guess kind of connecting your and Daryl's question here, it might be fine to just still address the council and then CC the city manager or administrator. That way you can still address the council directly. But I think either way is probably totally fine. It may make them feel more respected to not CC them and address the whole city. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, great question. Okay. All right, so I'll stop presenting there and go back to my slides here. All right. So yeah, as I said, copy all those email addresses to start drafting the email. Recommend putting all those people, include everyone on there, and that can kind of spark the discussion between the council and everyone involved as well. They may talk to each other and say, hey, did you see this come in? And that way discussion at least happens. So we took a couple minutes to find yours. Alex, were you able to find yours, or are you still driving?
No, I was able to find mine. I am sent home. I found, the mayor, city councilors. It looks like the city administrator is separate. I don't have an email for them, but there is an email for the executive assistant, so I can probably just include them.
Yeah, that's great. Sometimes executive assistants are the ones that put together the agendas, so that can be a great person to include as well. All right, awesome. So getting into tips, and then we'll get into drafting the body of the email. So length and formatting is something to consider. I would only make it a few paragraphs at most, probably like 3 paragraphs, anywhere from 150 to 350 words. You want to keep it short. Make it so that they can just quickly read over, understand your request, understand who you are, and be able to respond shortly, rather than writing it too lengthy, or if you keep it even like too short, then they might feel like, oh, I can just easily disregard this. This is someone who didn't really take the time to invest. But usually that 150 to 350 words is the sweet spot. In terms of formatting, the 3 sections are just going to be introduction, your ask, and then your closing, and we'll go over each of those individually here. So starting with the introduction, in that subject line, just put something simple that describes your ask really easily. So what I typically put is request for presentation on approval voting. Now that's coming from me as someone who works for this organization who's directly asking for that presentation. So you might put something slightly different, like let's see, constituent concerned about our voting method or something like that. So after I go through this slide, we'll also take a couple minutes to think of what you want your subject line to be, and go through that first paragraph, and we'll see where we get. So on the first paragraph, I would start just respectfully with something like, Dear Clearfield City Council, or Dear Amalga Town Council, and then thank them for their service to your community. So that's usually really valuable. What I usually put in my email is, first, allow me to thank you for your service to your community. I believe the heart of our democracy is responsive local politics, and I appreciate your dedication to being public servants. Show that you appreciate what they do and understand that they are doing this because they care about the city. And you know, it's usually not a profitable gig to be a city councilor, but they usually care and they want to be involved. So thank them for that, make them feel good and appreciated. I think it's valuable to add a sentiment on why that's important to you. So if there's something that you particularly value about city councilors and investing in the community, I think that's great. If you know or have something to add that they've done recently or have said that you appreciated, including that is a great option. An example here is that voters should choose their elected officials, not the other way around. I love that this is on your campaign website. This is a great way to just make a personal connection and show that you have shared values. So take a look around their campaign websites, or if they have like a quote listed under their name on the website, that can be useful. Or if they've just done something like started an initiative or voted on something that you cared about in your city or town, mentioning that is great. Definitely not required, but it can be bonus points. After you've kind of done that thank you and gone over some shared values, Then you can introduce yourself. So just start with your name and mention that you're a resident of the city. Like I said earlier, it's super valuable for them to know that you live in their city and that you care about this issue. That's how a lot of city councilors will decide what they want to focus on, and what they want to hear about is knowing that people in their city or town actually care about this issue. So definitely mention that right up front. And if you've lived there for an impressively long time, definitely mention that. Like, I've been a resident of Clearfield for 10 years, or I grew up here and still live here. Those kinds of things can be really valuable. If you've only lived there for like a few months, maybe don't add that, but still saying that you're a resident without including the time is still going to be valuable to them. But it's just a bonus point to add if you've been there for a long time. Lastly, just mention that you're reaching out regarding your cause. So in this case, it's approval voting. In the future, it might be something else. And then just give a quick explainer of what that is. So what I say here is that my name is Nate Allen. I am the executive director of Utah Approves, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving voting methods to best reflect the values of all voters. Our primary focus is on the implementation of approval voting, a simple yet impactful method that allows voters to say yes or no to all candidates on the ballot, similar to city council races, allowing for multiple selections. And I like to mention that last part because they're already familiar with how a city council race works, obviously. In most city council races, you can choose 2 or 3 people on your ballot. So approval voting is very similar. It just takes that cap off and allows you to choose as many as you like. Okay, so we will take 3 minutes to start writing your own. So let me know if you have any questions, but I'll just give you guys a few minutes and we'll come back and kind of share that with the group. And then we will move on to the next paragraph. Okay. All right. Anyone want to volunteer to share what they've written so far?
I can. I'm just finishing this last sentence.
Tempted to make a pencils down quote.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So what I currently have, and I'll definitely be editing this. I live in Orem. So, hello, Orem City. Thank you for your dedication to creating a welcoming, quality living environment for Orem residents. I grew up here during my high school years, and I'm living here again. I'm Trevor Fielding, and I'm reaching out in regards to approval voting, an alternative voting method that I believe is vital to allow better representation and quality of politics.
That's great. That's perfect. Yeah, so you started to respectfully thank them for something that meant something personally to you, talked about that you've been a resident and value living in that city, and then mentioned the cause. So that was great.
Awesome.
Okay, anyone else want to go? And it's okay if it's a rough draft, first time we're doing this, and I can give some feedback as well.
Okay, so I can go and I can tell you I'm only on the first paragraph and I'm way too wordy. So I'm going to need the feedback to cut this thing down. I do talk to my council a lot. I have been known to be negative. So my goal that they know I've mentioned 2 or 3 times recently is to be positive. So I might have gone too far. So here's the first paragraph because I ran out of time. Dear South Salt Lake, first I want to say how much I value how wonderful it is that you or we embrace all our varied cultures in South Salt Lake. I love that we quickly embraced Juneteenth and have had 3 marvelous events for each of the 3 years since it became a holiday. That's as far as I got. I didn't say anything else. They do know how long I've lived there, which is most of my 74 years. They do know that I have a big mouth. So I don't know a lot about the voting that we're proposing, and I do know that my city will fight everything to do with voting,
Okay,
residents and everybody included.
Okay. No, I think that's a great start, and especially if they already know you, like, stick true to who you are. So I think that's great, Susan. Mentioning something that you really appreciate about the city that's been done recently, so that's something that the current counselors were most likely involved in. I think that's a great start. So I would just, yeah, quickly maybe mention, like, as you know, my name is Susan. I've lived here for most of my life, or my entire life. So I think that's a great start. And then after this, what I'll do is I'll send out, or maybe I can just share it here, the document that has my sample on there, so you can at least get a sentence on there about approval voting. And even if they're hesitant to it, if they ask questions, that's a great start. And then the goal at the end of the day is to be able to get them to at least be open-minded to a presentation happening where I can go and kind of explain the benefits of this voting method and how it might not be as complicated as they're imagining and might not have the downsides that they're imagining. So getting the foot in the door is a great start.
And just one question on that. When I tell them that I'm interested in this voting method, you will present it. I don't need to figure out how to do it when I don't. Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's
right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good clarification.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, anyone else want to share? Otherwise, we'll move on to the ask. Okay, awesome. So getting to the middle paragraph here, make the ask. So basically the idea is to just ask if they would be open to Utah Approves delivering a presentation to the council on approval voting. I would mention what I mentioned at the top of this, which is that we are in the effort of collecting these letters and talk about why we're doing this, which is to provide a voting method that best reflects the values of the voters. That's a line that we think works really well and really gets people thinking about what the point of voting is and why we might be doing this type of work, is that we just want our voting system to best reflect what people care about at the end of the day. And so that's a line that I would always mention. It's just a really good way to summarize. Then bonus points for including something personal on how it might affect you, your family, and or the community at large. So if you know something that might have happened in a previous election where a lot of people felt like the person who won wasn't the right candidate, or if there's something more general like feeling like a majority of people in the city care about one thing but it hasn't been getting focused on, and you know that even some of the counselors might care about that, that's something that you might mention. Want to steer clear of like saying you guys aren't doing something right though, because these are ultimately the people. Just dropped a link in the chat here, which is a link that will take you to all of the letters that we've received from cities so far. I would download those and attach them to the email that you're sending. If you follow that link, you'll be able to see the 4 letters that we have so far. You can just download them from that folder and put them on your email so that they can see who has actually done this so far. That's actually been really beneficial for us. When we were talking to South Ogden, when they actually made their final vote on it, they mentioned that a lot of other good cities have chosen to do this so far and that they think it would be a good idea. So again, those 4 cities are North Ogden, South Ogden, Plain City, and Huntsville. So you can include that in your mention. What I say on this part is, as part of our advocacy efforts, we are in the process of collecting letters that support the option of approval voting in municipalities from city councils across the state, which will be delivered to the legislature. To date, 4 municipalities, and list them, have written such letters, which you can see attached for your reference. So that's what I do at the end here. At the beginning of that paragraph, I'll just say I am writing to inquire if it would be possible for Utah Approves to deliver a presentation to the council on approval voting. Our objective is just to inform and give comprehensive information about this method and its potential benefits. So. Lastly, like I had mentioned earlier, the county clerks are very supportive of this method as it being like the best alternative method that's out there. So I would just mention that the county clerks have stated that they would have no issues implementing approval voting. Even for individual cities in the county, they don't require, if it's provided as an option, they wouldn't require an entire county to opt in, for instance. So. Okay, let's take a quick 5 minutes and do this ask, and then I know we're getting close to the end of the time here, so we'll do the closing really quickly. take any last minute questions. So actually, let's just do 3 minutes here as well. You can start writing this and finish it later. And you can always reach out to me with questions. But yeah, we'll take 3 minutes real quick right now. All right, we will start coming back. Does anyone want to share what they wrote for the ask?
Okay, I'm game if you're not tired of me.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I'm saying today I am writing to ask you to allow a presentation on an approval voting method because I think we could get more voter involvement using it. I've attached info about it and a list of cities that are trying it. I think anything that increases voter participation would be of great benefit to our city. And I wanted to, oh, I think I left off the beginning. It was, as we all know, South Salt Lake has a very low voter turnout. I'm learning about this program, and then I go into that ask.
Perfect.
That was rough. That beginning was rough and needs some transition.
Sure, yeah. It'll always take a couple of drafts to get it just how you want it, but I think that's a great start. You go over a couple of things that are specific to the city and that is personal to you on why you think it would be great. So talking about voter turnout in the city being low, approval voting can increase turnout because it makes people feel like their voice matters more. So I think that's a great thing. You also mentioned that you'll attach some info on it. I can share out. I'll send an email out probably with a couple of pieces of info after this that will include like an educational handout that you can just provide in that email and attach as well. So I think that's a great idea. Good job, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I can read mine real quick. So here's what I have. The nonprofit Utah Approves is leading the approval voting movement here in Utah, and they are collecting letters of support from city councils. In parentheses, I attached the letters we've received so far to this email. I'm very passionate about approval voting and how it can improve democratic representation, cool political divisions, and allow constituents to vote true to their nuanced political beliefs. This alternative voting method is approved by all county clerks in Utah because of its logistical simplicity and security. I'm wondering if you'd be open to hearing a presentation from Utah Approves to learn more about how this can help or improve.
That's perfect. Yeah, excellent. So, yeah, you mentioned approval voting. You talked about what you think it could do to help benefit, the fact that it was that's supported by the county clerks in the state. So that's excellent. Yeah, I think that was great.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. So moving on to the closing here. Usually just a really short paragraph that is something like basically just asking again in like one sentence, just again mentioning, would it be possible for Utah Approves to come give a presentation? Mention that you would be happy to answer any questions that they might have. Basically say thank you and offer that closing greeting. Let me pull up real quick this document again and just read what I have as my closing. So, would it be feasible to schedule a presentation slot on an upcoming agenda within the next few weeks? We are excited to discuss this method and answer any questions you may have. Thank you for considering our request, and I look forward to hearing from you. So, something really simple. Oh, I just realized I had it on this slide too. So, yeah, and you can say something like, please feel free to respond here or call me at, and you can provide your phone number if you feel comfortable with them giving you a call and asking you questions about it. So, okay, so that part's really simple, just a typical closing to the email mentioning that ask again. Now, I wanted to throw a slide in here on ChatGPT. ChatGPT, as most of you might know, is just an AI tool that helps you write things and can improve your writing. Once you have your letter written, I think putting it into ChatGPT can be really useful. You can just ask it for any final tips